This weekend, the Miami Hurricanes are going to have 5-star visitors and a ton of blue chippers on campus and at Mario Cristobal's house. Here's what the Canes need to do to close.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. Thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode, we're going to talk a lot of recruiting with our special guest. Who's going to be Miami's quarterback in the class of 2027? Who is Miami in a good position to close with all of the blue chippers? We're talking 20-plus guys who are going to be visiting this weekend, starting with 305 Day on March 5th. Who is Miami in the best position for it? But also the impact of the new tight ends coach with Mike Viti, associate head coach and offensive line coach at Army, reportedly now taking the job to coach tight ends at the U. I'm very excited to bring in our guest for this one, who he's only been on the Miami beat for like a month, EJ Holland, and you've already put out like a year's worth of articles and reports. EJ, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And if you guys are not aware of EJ's work, you probably are if you're ever on social media, if you're on canesport.com, on 3 Rivals. EJ is new to the Miami beat. And all right, first things first, EJ reported last night, and we talked about it here on Locked On Canes. Mike Viti is looks like he's going to be taking over the open tight ends coach job at the U. Really impressive guy who's been coaching at Army for the past 10 years, most recently the offensive line. He had that group win the Joe Moore Award, first time a group of 6, let alone a service academy, ever won that award for the most outstanding O-line. And I feel like we're never going to see a tight end miss a block at a crucial spot ever again, with that being the guy to answer to. But what are your early impressions on Coach Viti, and also what's he going to have to accomplish on the recruiting trail? Because I know tight end's a really important spot in this cycle.
Yeah, definitely. I expect Miami to take a couple of tight ends, so probably 2 tight ends this cycle. I think it's going to be critical for him to get adjusted to recruiting at a program like Miami. I think Army is kind of a unique place, not your traditional recruiting. Army can be a difficult place to get guys too. You have to be willing to sign up and serve. So I think that, at Miami, though, he'll have plenty of resources, might be a somewhat easy transition, taking advantage of what Miami has to offer. But I think he's a guy who, we're still learning about, but early returns sound really promising. He's a guy who seems hard-nosed, physical type of football, which obviously, coming over from Army, that's what you'd expect. He's also a guy who serves. So I think he's going to bring that leadership quality to Miami and be a great on-field addition. I think it'll be, like I said, a little bit of a learning curve on the recruiting side, but I don't think that'll be, much of an issue. Like I said, Miami brings so many resources, and I think he can be where I think he can really excel is, and not that he needs a ton of help, but helping Alex Mirabal with offensive line recruiting. I mean, it's an easy sell when you have Mario Cristobal's background, Alex Mirabal, one of the best developers in college football, and now you bring in Viti. I mean, I completely expect him to be involved with offensive line recruiting. So I think that'll help. But when it comes to tight end recruiting, like I said, they need to. I think that, Cristobal is not going to hire somebody who doesn't want to have a passion for recruiting, who wants to immerse themselves in recruiting. So I think Cristobal's vetting process, there's a standard there. And I think Viti certainly met that. So I don't think he'll have much of an issue recruiting tight ends. And, he already has a great board to work with. During this transition time, Cristobal personally invested in recruiting tight ends himself. So, he got some guys to set visits. Jackson Dollar, who I just saw in North Carolina, top 100 prospect, one of the best tight ends in the country. He's coming in for the pool party in April. Anthony Cartwright, a Rivals 300 tight end out of Detroit. He's already set an official visit. So he has a lot of guys to work with. I'm sure he'll hit the ground running. And I think there shouldn't be any reason to worry about him. I've seen some people bring this up with going from the offensive line to tight end. That should be a fairly easy transition. Yeah. I've seen that many times. One guy I know personally, Juan Castillo, who was a longtime Eagles assistant. He started off as a tight ends coach, moved to offensive line, did some more tight end work, and he's considered one of the best in recent memory to coach, the offensive line and the tight end position. So I think that overall, it's a great hire. I think it's a kind of an under the radar great hire, just because I think people are still learning more about him. But I have full confidence that he'll be a great coach on the field. And I have confidence that he'll pick up the recruiting side very quickly.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially with what you're saying about transitioning from offensive line coach to tight ends coach. Like you said, we see it commonly and vice versa as well. We've seen tight end coaches convert to O-line and vice versa. So I'm not worried about that transition either. I do want to talk about all the visitors, EJ. You mentioned there's a pool party in April, but then there's also a recruiting event this coming weekend. Bunch of guys RSVP'd to come to Mario Cristobal's house. I guess the first guy I want to ask you about, because you put in a prediction for Miami to land this player, and that's top receiver Nick Lennear, who's now at Miami Carol City. It seems like there's a ton of confidence there from the Miami side with Lennear. Tell me a little bit more about that, and also is there a timeline for him to make a verbal commitment?
Definitely. So I had a chance to spend some time with Nick out in Atlanta at the Sevens tournament, which is one of the premier 7-on-7 tournaments in the country. And, he's a quiet kid. He doesn't like giving too much away. You can tell he doesn't really enjoy the media side of it or the social media side of it. So I don't think he is one of those, 5-star level prospects who really loves the process. A lot of times you get kids who are at this level that are enamored with the process. They like to play games and take it, the distance and milk the process as much as possible, which is fine, man. These are kids. So, but I don't think I didn't really get that from Nick. You could tell he just wasn't really about it. So, I think that he's a guy who could make a decision at some point in the next few months. He even told me his preference is to make a decision sometime this spring. Now he'll be on campus this week. Can Miami potentially close as early as this week? I wouldn't completely rule that out. Could they close later in the spring? Sure. What I found interesting is that Nick does have a couple of other official visits set. He has LSU, he has USC set in the summer. And when I asked him, so you want to make a spring decision, that means you decide before OVs. And he was like, yeah, I guess that's, what it'll come down to. So I think that those official visits that he has set may not even happen if he sticks with that spring timeline, which again, I think is very possible just because he's a kid who doesn't seem to enjoy the process. So I think he'd like to get this over with. I think there are a lot of positive indicators for Miami here. Obviously, it's close to home. He had a chance to see what Malachi Toney did as a true freshman coming out of South Florida. He told me he kind of envisions himself potentially doing the same thing. And he was pretty, straightforward and said Miami is number one going into the spring. And it's hard to really think of a program that's the true number two, maybe LSU because they have an OV set. USC didn't even make the top 5 and they have an OV set.
Yeah, I thought that was odd.
Which I asked him about, and he said that there was an issue with getting the graphic put into place or whatever. But that to me says USC has a lot of ground to make up there. So I feel like Miami is the clear leader here. I think Miami will close. It's just a matter of how soon can they get it done.
I think every Miami fan loves to hear that. And Lennear is going to be one of a handful of 5-star caliber players who will be on hand this weekend. I want to get EJ's thoughts on the others. You want to keep it locked right here. EJ Holland is with us. I'm really enjoying this. I hope you guys are as well, because we're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated St. John's 85-49 on Sunday at Madison Square Garden, extending its winning streak to 47 games. The Huskies capped a perfect 31-0 regular season, including 20-0 in the Big East. UConn is winning by nearly 38 points per game, the third largest average margin in Division I history. Since 1999 to 2000, UConn has 9 undefeated regular seasons, as many as all other programs combined, and has turned 6 of those into national championships. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And if you're an everydayer, make your status official by joining the Everydayer Club. Hit that all-access tier, and you get exclusive episodes of the Canes Colada every single day. I also give you guys exclusive newsletters, one-on-one texting with me, and Discord server access. There's so many great benefits. Go to lockedoncanes.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes below to become an all-access Everydayer today. We have the privilege of being joined by EJ Holland, Rivals on 3 Sports. You could see his work at canesport.com. He's doing a great job on the Miami beat covering recruiting. So EJ, I look at some of the other top visitors coming in addition to Nick Lennear this week. Running back, I really like Myson Johnson-Cook, who's a Rivals top 100 guy. Wide receiver Julius Jones from South Florida, but he's a Notre Dame legacy. Defensive lineman Jamar Thompson. Top linebacker Kaden Henderson is going to be on hand. How do you feel with some of these? We're talking top 100 guys, 5-star caliber guys. Does Miami have a decent shot with any of these others in addition to Nick Lennear, and what's it going to take to get some of these over the finish line?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, one guy that comes to mind that I think Miami has been a strong contender with for a while is Zayden Gamble out of St. Thomas Aquinas. He, teammate of Julius Jones. They both go to that, national powerhouse down in South Florida. So Zayden Gamble, it's Miami and Florida right now. Miami, like I said, has been a strong contender for a long time, but Florida's new staff has made him a top priority. They are pushing really, really hard. And I think the Gators built up some momentum on his winter visit. He was there right before the dead period. I think Miami can regain that momentum, establish themselves as the team to beat in this recruitment, on this visit. So Zayden Gamble is definitely one I think Miami can keep home. They just have to, again, get that momentum back. I think they have a chance to really move the needle with some of the other guys that you mentioned. Myson Johnson-Cook, one of the most important visitors coming in. This will be his first time on campus. It'll be also his first time getting a chance to meet new running backs coach Fabian Upshaw. We talked a lot about Viti at the top. I think Upshaw, kind of a sneaky good hire there too. Had a lot of praise in the NFL. He's a younger guy. He went through the process. He played, college football himself, obviously recently, just, a few years ago. So I think that he can really relate to these guys. And that's half the battle, is just connecting to these guys on a personal level. So I think that, it's a critical weekend for Upshaw. He has a chance to impress Myson Johnson-Cook, as well as Rivals 300 running back Elijah Kimball, who's making his way down to Miami from New York. Julius Jones, you mentioned, absolutely love him. Great kid, man. I think he'd be a great culture fit at a place like Miami. You hear the Notre Dame ties. Obviously, his dad was Julius Jones, who played there and then spent some time in the NFL. And I think it's always tough to pull a legacy kid, especially a Notre Dame legacy kid. That's a very interesting program. But I think that Julius is open to other schools. And I think the 2 schools that have the best chance to pull him away from Notre Dame are Oregon and Miami. And I think this visit will go a long way. And I think if Miami's able to maybe get a guy like Zayden Gamble in, or another teammate, 5-star offensive tackle, Mark Matthews, that could, help a lot as well. So, Julius, I think, wants to take his time, go through the process. He also has an official visit set for May 28th with Miami. So I think that, again, Miami will have multiple opportunities to impress him, not just this week. He'll be back for a spring practice, like I said, the OV. So it's going to be a little bit of work there with the Notre Dame ties for obvious reasons, but I think Miami is certainly a contender there. Jamar Thompson, out of West Boca, one of my favorite programs in South Florida. I think that Miami kind of built an early lead there. He's been really quiet, so interested to see what comes of this visit. I know Nebraska started to gain a little bit of steam in that recruitment, but I think Miami, as long as they push and continue to make him feel like a top priority, they should have the inside track. So really interested to see what he has to say coming out of this visit. Kaden Henderson, definitely an interesting one as well. He's a kid who I had a chance to spend some time with at the Under Armour All-America game. At that point, I was on the Michigan beat, but I was incognito doing Miami stuff.
I love that. We had ourselves a double agent.
Yeah, I was. So I sat down with Kaden and I was like, hey, man, I'm going to flip. So, I had a really good conversation. It was actually a good icebreaker because we spent like 10 minutes just kind of, chopping it up a little bit. And I think that Miami, he was completely honest with me. He was like, Miami wasn't really in my top 3, top 5 going into the season. But what Miami did on the field with the national championship, with what Corey Heatherman did with the defense, I think that really opened his eyes. And, Miami's made him feel like a top of the board priority. Cristobal was at his school. Heatherman was at his school. They're all in on him. And I think Miami has seen the biggest jump in that recruitment. I would say they are firmly in his top 3. Now, our Rivals national analyst, Steve Wilfong, put in a prediction for Texas A&M. And I would say that Texas A&M does lead right now, but that could change. And I actually talked to Wilfong yesterday, and he said, hey, my pick is subject to change. Like Miami, if Texas A&M is one, his exact quote was, if Texas A&M is 1A, then Miami is 1B right now. And the longer Kaden continues to stretch out his recruitment, the better for Miami.
And I like that a lot. I want to circle back to one of the names you mentioned earlier who's not going to be on hand this weekend, but it takes a lot of unofficial visits to Miami. You mentioned Mark Matthews, 5-star offensive tackle from St. Thomas, who I feel like is a must-get for Miami in this cycle, especially now that you have another offensive line coach on the staff now coaching your tight ends, right? All the more reason to land Mark Matthews. How do you feel about where Miami stands with Matthews right now?
Yeah, I still really like where Miami stands. I haven't put in a prediction quite yet with Mark because I think he's very well versed in the recruiting process. He doesn't give a lot away. Really fun to talk to. A great kid as well. All those St. Thomas kids, Gamble, Matthews, and Jones would be really high character additions to the Miami program. But I think Mark knows how to play the game, knows how to keep things close to the vest. But I do believe Miami will ultimately win this out. I mean, Miami has so much to sell. You talk about the NIL component. It's obviously there. You talk about the development. Can't get any better than Mirabal. And like you mentioned, now you have Viti, you have Cristobal's background, easy sell, close to home. It just checks all the boxes for him. I think that if there are a couple of programs that are, making some noise in this recruitment, they're Georgia and Texas A&M. They're pushing really, really hard as well. Both of those schools are willing to invest on the NIL front. Both of those schools have also had some offensive line success as well. So I think that, with Mark, if he takes it into the summer, which is his plan right now, those schools will get a fair opportunity on official visits. But I think at the end of the day, Miami is going to be really hard to beat in the Mark Matthews recruitment. So he's another kid, maybe not as low key as Nick Lennear, but I don't get the sense that he loves the process either. So I think he does want to at least get to summer OVs, but I could see him making a decision quickly after those end.
Well, we're having a great conversation here with EJ Holland, who covers Miami recruiting at Rivals on 3 at canesport.com. And when we come back, I want to pick EJ's brain on who the quarterback might end up being for the Canes in the class of 2027. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local and find a store near you and book your appointment. Folks, we're also proudly brought to you by Game Time. It's the biggest stretch of the college basketball season, and your Canes are right in the thick of it, NCAA tournament bound. You get those buzzer beaters, bracket busters, those unforgettable moments that everyone's talking about the next day. Being live for that, that's bucket list stuff. The hard part is always actually getting tickets with those long queues, prices jumping at checkout, surprise fees. But Game Time gives fans the advantage back with constant innovation. It's how you unlock amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. It's incredibly simple to use. The Game Time guarantee means 100% legitimate tickets delivered on time at the best price. And here's the best part. Fees are included in the price you see. What you see is what you pay, period. And the seat view feature is a game changer. You see a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying college basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Alex Donno, joined by EJ Holland, Rivals on 3, does an awesome job covering Miami recruiting for Cane Sport. All right, so EJ, I know Miami's getting some quarterbacks in this weekend, including Davin Davidson, who seems like an exciting prospect. There have been some recent links to Will Menzel, a guy Miami may be surging for. I mean, do you have any suspicion on who the quarterback might end up being for the Canes in 2027?
Yeah, Davin Davidson's not the only quarterback coming in. Neiman Lawrence, top 100 guy in 2028, is coming in, but he could end up reclassifying. Yeah. So if Neiman Lawrence reclassifies, I could easily see him being the guy in this class. He's another South Florida kid. I think Miami's done a really good job in that recruitment early on. So I think that's the storyline to watch. If Neiman Lawrence reclassifies, like I said, he could end up being the guy. If he decides to stick in 2028, then that definitely opens the door for a guy like Davin Davidson. It would be great to keep him in state. He's been a big riser this offseason, made a huge jump in the rankings, was unranked, now a top 150 kid. I like him. He's a taller pocket passer who has good mobility in and around the pocket. You mentioned Will Menzel. They're certainly shooting their shot with him. He was another big riser, moved up into the 5-star territory in this Rivals rankings update. I think that some of the schools out west, like Oregon, are high on his list too. So it'll be interesting to see where Miami stands maybe at the end of spring. And another quarterback I really love is Israel Abrams out of Chicago. Miami has had some success pulling Chicago kids. You see guys like Justin Scott and Marquise Lightfoot. I think that's certainly appealing to Abrams. Miami just offered. He's already set a spring visit. So I really think Abrams, could be a guy to watch for the Hurricanes moving forward. He's certainly a name that fans should get more familiar with. And I think he's a 5-star level prospect as well. So, those 3 guys certainly come to mind, but I think we're all on Neiman Lawrence reclass watch.
Yeah, that's well said. EJ, I'm curious, since you've been on the Miami beat, how long have you now been on the Miami beat? Like, how many weeks or months has it been?
I think today marks like 1 month.
Wow.
So very long.
So in this last month, talking to, not only scouting, but talking to so many different recruits that Miami is after, like, what have you learned by talking with players about the way Mario Cristobal and his staff recruit? And is there anything kind of unique to their approach, or do they just work harder than most staffs? Is it that simple?
I think that Mario Cristobal as a head coach truly loves recruiting, and you don't see that from every head coach. I think some head coaches embrace it and others don't. I've covered head coaches who have, and I've covered some head coaches who haven't. I covered Charlie Strong at Texas, and he hated recruiting, and that's why he didn't survive very long. So I think that with Mario Cristobal, he has his hand in a lot of big time recruitments and some not even so big time recruitments. I think he just truly enjoys getting out on the road, meeting with prospects, meeting families, being involved in the process. I think he has a really good GM in Dennis Smith, who's received a lot of praise from NIL agents that I've talked to. And these days, having a relationship with NIL agents can be just as important as having a relationship with recruits. So I think that Dennis and his staff are doing a really good job on that front. And I think Mario and his staff are doing a really good job on the recruiting aspect of it, with the actual recruits, with the families, with the coaches, with the mentors. I just think Miami does a fantastic job of checking all the boxes. I think another thing with Miami that non-Miami fans may, when you look at the Miami program, you might think, it's all, bells and whistles. It's this flashy program. It's the U. And you might not think that Miami has this really strong culture from the outside looking in, but they do. Talking to recruits, it's been great to hear how many prospects talk about the culture that Cristobal has built in Coral Gables. And again, I just don't think when you think of Miami, from the outside looking in, it's just such a fun program. You might not think about the culture, but that culture, that discipline, and you see it with the guys and the development, that's something that's another huge selling point, culture development. And that's huge for recruits. So when you get beyond just, that logo that means so much, and you really dive deep into the program, you get that culture, you get that development. I think recruits see that when they make these visits, when they meet with Cristobal, when they meet with Jason Taylor, when they meet with Alex Mirabal, Corey Heatherman, like all these guys have, so much on their resume, especially coming off of last year's run to the national title. You can sell that success. So I think Miami is built not just for now. I think Miami has a great chance to get back to the national championship this season, but I think they're building for the long term. I think it's going to have sustained success. And, initially even when I was on the Michigan beat and, they made the run to the national championship under Jim Harbaugh, they were really going downhill on the recruiting side. And I was like, man, Michigan is just not built for long-term success. And when I had an opportunity to move over to Miami, it was a no-brainer. Initially, I was going to flip to USC, and then the Miami opportunity came up. And like I said, it was a no-brainer. I think Miami is the best program to cover in the country right now because they're getting it done on the field. They're getting it done on the recruiting trail, and the future is so, so exciting. So I think recruits have so many great things to say about Miami right now, and it extends beyond just the cool factor of Miami. Like there's actual, merit in what Cristobal is selling from a culture and development standpoint. So, like I said, a lot to be excited about with Miami. I'm glad to be a part of it. It's been 1 month, and it feels like,
crazy. It's only been a while. Yeah, I remember as soon as I saw like the announcement that you were and I've known, Gary Furman and the crew at Kane Sport for a long time, but then when I saw the announcement you're going to be cut, and then I started to see like 24 stories and reports a day from you. I'm like, all right, this guy's making himself comfortable very quickly on the Miami beat. So it's been a great month and many more to come. And yeah, I would say adding EJ Holland, who's one of the underrated transfer portal additions in Miami, to be able to add you down here. EJ, I can't thank you enough for the time, my friend. And yeah, we'd love to have you on again sometime.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Get me back on the show anytime. Love interacting with all the Miami fans. You guys have been great, very supportive. Make sure to sign up for Cane Sport. It's just $1.
Oh, dang. All right. That's a pretty sweet deal. And after you do that, also make sure to follow EJ at EJ Holland on 3 on X and check out his great work at Cane Sport and on all over social media. Huge shout out to the everydayers. And my friends, we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.